The battle was over, but the dying wasn't finished. Captain Darius Kane moved through the aftermath of Kesvara Ridge, checking his squad for injuries while smoke from plasma fire still hung thick in the air. The alliance with the Sylvath Dominion was barely 6 months old, born from desperation, maintained through necessity, complicated by cultural gaps wider than the void between stars. He heard the commotion before he saw it. Sylvath warriors gathered in a tight circle, their voices raised in what sounded like anguished argument. Darius pushed through and stopped dead. War Commander Thessara lay on the ground, bleeding from multiple wounds. Her crystalline eyes were half open, her breathing shallow. She was dying, and her soldiers just stood there. "Why the hell isn't anyone helping her?" Darius demanded. A Sylvath officer turned to him, face twisted with pain and helplessness. "She is sacred caste. Our law forbids lower caste from touching sacred caste outside ritualized combat. To do so brings shame beyond death. We have called for healers of appropriate rank, but she'll be dead before they arrive." Darius stared at the circle of warriors, paralyzed by law while their commander bled out. "That's insane." "It is our way," the officer said, but his voice broke on the words. Darius didn't waste more time on debate. Their laws didn't bind him, human and uninterested in watching someone die because of taboo. He pushed past protesting soldiers and dropped to his knees beside Thessara. Her injuries were severe but stabilizable if he could get her to the medical transport. He'd carried wounded off battlefields on a dozen worlds. He could do this. When he slid his arms beneath her, the Sylvath reaction was explosive. Warriors drew weapons. Officers shouted warnings. The entire battalion seemed to hold its breath. Darius ignored them all, carefully lifting Thessara into his arms. She was lighter than expected, her body tensing with pain as he stood. Her eyes opened fully, meeting his, and she whispered something in her own language he didn't understand before consciousness left her. The walk to medical transport was the longest of his life. Sylvath warriors parted before him like he carried something sacred and terrible. His own squad provided escort, weapons ready, uncertain if they were preventing a diplomatic incident or about to start one. At the transport, Sylvath medical staff of appropriate caste took over with efficient urgency. But the looks they gave Darius ranged from horror to something that might have been gratitude. Colonel Chen arrived within the hour. "Please tell me you have a good explanation for violating their most sacred taboo." She was dying, they weren't helping. I don't need a better explanation than that. Chen rubbed her temples. Sylvath High Command is in emergency session trying to figure out how to respond. Some want you punished. Others say since you're not Sylvath, their laws don't apply. But there's a third faction suggesting maybe your act reveals something broken in their sacred law. Darius thought about Thessara's eyes meeting his, the whispered words he couldn't understand. "I'd do it again." "I know, that's what worries me." 3 days later, Thessara requested to meet with him. The briefing room was neutral territory, aboard the human command ship, with observers from both species maintaining careful distance. Thessara entered walking on her own, though Darius could see the effort it cost. She shouldn't be out of medical care. She stood before him and did something that made every Sylvath observer freeze, removed the honor blade from her belt and placed it at his feet. Gasps, urgent whispers in her language. "You carried me when my own people could not," Thessara said in careful standard. "You violated our most sacred law to preserve my life. In doing so, you created Kesther, a debt bond that cannot be repaid through normal means. By our law, I am bound to you until the debt is satisfied." Darius stared at the blade. "I didn't save you expecting payment. That is why the bond exists. Kesther honors those who act without thought of reward." She met his eyes. "I am sacred caste and war commander. My debt bond to you creates unprecedented complications, but I will not dishonor your courage by refusing to acknowledge it." Colonel Chen leaned close to Darius. "If you refuse the blade, she's shamed irreparably. If you accept, you're caught in Sylvath political nightmare." Darius looked at Thessara, at the wound still healing, at the pride and isolation in her bearing. I don't want anyone bound to me. Then release me when the debt is satisfied, Thessara said quietly. But do not refuse to acknowledge what exists. Slowly, Darius picked up the honor blade. The Sylvith observers released collective breath, and Thessara's shoulders relaxed fractionally. What now? Darius asked. Now we determine how to navigate customs neither of us chose. Over the following weeks, political factions scrambled to manage the unprecedented bond between their war commander and a human mercenary. Hardline nobles tried removing Darius from joint operations entirely. Thessara responded by invoking her authority to assign Darius and his unit as her personal tactical advisors, using Kesther to keep him close and protected. They worked together closely, planning operations against the Ravager swarms. Darius discovered Thessara wasn't just brilliant commander, but someone profoundly isolated by sacred status. The very rank giving her authority also separated her from normal interaction. Other Sylvith approached with ritual formality, maintained careful distance. The prohibition against casual touch meant she'd lived years without physical comfort or connection. You were the first person to touch me without fear or formality in longer than I can remember, she admitted during late-night tactical session, her composure cracking slightly. The first to see me as someone who could die, rather than sacred caste who must be preserved at distance. Darius began understanding the profound loneliness of her position. I'm sorry you've lived like that. But I'm grateful you showed me it doesn't have to be that way. She met his eyes. The Kessler bond is burden for you, I know this. It's not, he stopped. Honesty seemed important. I don't know how to be what you need. How to help you satisfy that bond I never wanted you to carry. Perhaps we discover that together. Friendship developed, built on mutual respect and shared experience of being caught between cultural expectations, neither fully accepted. But friendship was complicated by growing feelings neither could openly acknowledge. An attack on joint colony forced desperate defense. Darius and Thessara led side by side, their tactical coordination reaching almost telepathic precision. They protected each other's flanks with trust that took most soldiers years to develop. During the battle, Thessara took enemy blade meant for Darius. As he caught her falling form, again, she laughed weakly. Now we are even. But they both knew Kessler wasn't about keeping score. The defense succeeded barely. Waiting for medical evacuation, Darius held Thessara, no longer caring about taboos. She didn't pull away. The Sylvith warriors witnessing this didn't react with horror. They watched with something like understanding. At the medical facility, Thessara made formal declaration before high command and human leadership. She invoked ancient rite of oath bonding, requesting they grant Darius honorary sacred caste status, making him first non-Sylvith to receive such recognition. The political earthquake was immediate. Some nobles raged. Others recognized the brilliance. If Darius was sacred caste, his original act became not violation but permissible action between equals. Debate raged for days, but ultimately pragmatism won. The alliance was too valuable to sacrifice over customs that nearly cost them their best commander. Darius received honorary sacred caste status in ceremony, blending human and Sylvith traditions. As he accepted the honor blade properly this time, Thessara stood beside him, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with politics. Months later, they continued leading joint operations. The Kessler bond was satisfied legally when Darius received sacred caste status, but neither walked away. They chose to remain together, building something new from broken taboos. During quiet moment between battles, Thessara took his hand, casual touch that would have been unthinkable before. I was conscious when you first lifted me on that battlefield. I felt your arms around me, heard you promise I wouldn't die. In that moment, something fundamental shifted in my understanding of honor. I'd do it again without hesitation, Darius said. Some things matter more than rules, like not letting good people die when you have power to save them. Perhaps the greatest honor isn't following sacred law perfectly, she said softly, but knowing when compassion demands you break it. They become simple